Hi there, welcome back to Transfer Talk. We're going to speak to French football expert now. Jonathan Johnson is in Paris for us. Hi Jonathan, thanks very much for having a chat. Let's get right into it. We've just been talking about Manuel Ugarte. We seem to have been talking about him for most of the month in terms of possibly going to Manchester United. Is there growing optimism now that a deal can be done between PSG and Man U? Well, certainly there's still a feeling that PSG can and will let Ugarte go if a deal can possibly be reached with United. The main stumbling block this summer has been the fact that the two clubs' valuation of the player has been quite somewhere apart, but Ugarte wasn't involved in PSG's opening game of the season last week. So there is still a feeling that he is one of the players that the French champions will look to move on before the end of this transfer window. Obviously a player that United remain interested in, and the dialogue has never really broken up between United and PSG this summer, given PSG's interest in Jadon Sancho as well. Hi Jonathan, afternoon. Just on the theme of Manchester United, do PSG still want Jadon Sancho, or do you think they'll be looking elsewhere, or do you think they'll be happy with their squad? I think the situation has changed a little bit after the opening game of the season. Gonzalo Ramos picking up an injury that's probably going to keep him out for a couple of months, as opposed to a couple of weeks, and that now has prompted a bit of a rejig in terms of PSG's thinking. Are they still interested in Jadon Sancho's profile? Yes, he's a player they identified at the beginning of the summer who could possibly, fill their needs in the squad, and give them a real sort of right-sided presence in the attack. However, with this injury to Ramos, that means that there's no real possibility of moving Randall on between now and the end of the transfer window. So they'll stick with him in the middle and now possibly look for somebody who might be a little more complementary. So the name Ademola Lookman of Atalanta has surfaced in recent days, and there's now speculation that he perhaps has moved slightly ahead of Sancho in PSG's pecking order. Hi Jonathan, sticking with PSG, Carlos Soler is in talks with, West Ham are in talks with PSG to sign Carlos Soler at the moment. What would he bring to their midfield? They've obviously improved their midfield already this summer. And where would he fit into West Ham? Yeah, Soler's a really interesting one because he's got quite a versatile profile. He's certainly played a number of positions since he joined PSG a couple of years ago. Unused substitute last week in PSG's opening game, but he did make the matchday squad. So I think there is a feeling that Luis Enrique could still use him if he doesn't end up moving. However, Soler, in terms of what was expected from him at the very beginning of his time with PSG, I think many people expected him to be a very creative presence. He's been a bit more workmanlike than that. But that's also because of the way that he's been deployed by a number of different coaches. And I think West Ham would be getting somebody who is potentially a very creative player. If everybody remembers him at his best in Valencia back in the La Liga, a really superb player, and many people felt that PSG were getting an absolute bargain back then. And although he has proved to be decent value in the fact that he could fit in a number of different positions, whether it's a more central midfield role, whether it's even a full-back or wing-back at times, he is somebody who has added value to the squad. So I think the Hammers will be getting a very interesting type of player who could potentially fill a number of needs. Moving on to Everton, there are reports linking Neal Maupay with a move away. What can you tell us about that? Yeah, unfortunately, bad news for Maupay with a serious injury in the attacking ranks to Mourinho. So that means that Maupay will now be looking to make an attacking reinforcement. And Maupay has been sort of suggested as a bit of a low-cost approach, given that this has been quite a busy transfer window for Maupay so far. But they hit the ground running under Roberto De Zerbi in their opening game, really blowing out last season's surprise package Brest. And there has also been speculation that they're making a move on Norwich's Jonathan Rowe. That speculation isn't anything new. It's been around for a couple of weeks now. It feels like Rowe is perhaps the main priority for Marseille at this moment in time, with Maupay possibly being the player that they pivot to if it continues to be problematic for the Norwich man. Jonathan, we saw Tottenham in action last night, first Monday night football of the season. Just wondering, with a few weeks left to go of the window, could there be one more incoming, do you think, for Spurs? Yeah, there's a name that's certainly started to surface over here in France, and that's Monaco's Van der Zandt, primarily a right wing back. So definitely one to watch between now and the end of the window. Whether or not Monaco would feel that they can move him on and potentially move for somebody else to sort of fill in, that remains to be seen. But he's definitely a player that Monaco sort of wouldn't stand in the way of leaving if a suitable offer did arrive from the likes of Tottenham. Finally, Jonathan, just a quick word on Thierry Henry. He has resigned as the France under-21 boss. Why is that? Is there another move potentially on the cards? Yeah, this one's a curious one because obviously he hasn't been in the position or hadn't been in the position for a terribly long time. Although there was always a feeling that it was very much an appointment made for the Olympic Games, and he took the French team all the way to the final. They ended up as silver medalists, of course. There was speculation as well linking Henry with the USMNT, the US men's national team position. So that is something that has died off a little bit, obviously, since the Mauricio Pochettino taking that position has cropped up on the radar. So there is now a feeling that perhaps with his reputation at managerial level restored a little bit, that Henry could be perhaps looking at a return to the club game. But there was always a feeling, I think, that with Zinedine Zidane the obvious choice to replace Didier Deschamps, the head of the French national team after the 2026 World Cup cycle, that this was one for Henry to potentially get himself back into the managerial game, possibly put himself back on the market after the Olympics, which now seems to be the case. Great stuff, very informative as ever. Thank you very much, Jonathan.